Section: Introduction. In this section, we discuss the impressive abilities of language models, LLMs, in reasoning tasks, which depend significantly on training with large sets of problem-solution pairs. Gathering this data from humans is often expensive and time-consuming. Recent research shows that we can generate this data synthetically using LLMs, which could make the process more efficient and scalable. A common method involves sampling several potential solutions for a problem from an LLM, checking their correctness, and then fine-tuning models based on the correct answers. Studies indicate that LLMs trained with synthetic solutions often perform better than those trained with human-generated ones. However, using strong LLMs for sampling can be costly and resource-heavy, limiting the number of solutions we can generate. Therefore, we explore a different approach, sampling from a weaker but cheaper model instead of the stronger, more expensive one. We compare the data from the weaker model to that from the stronger model based on three important factors. 1. Coverage, which refers to the number of unique problems solved. 2. Diversity, which is the average number of unique solutions per problem. 3. False positive rate, FPR, the percentage of problems that reach the correct answer but have incorrect reasoning. Our findings suggest that the weaker model can produce more samples within a fixed budget, potentially leading to higher coverage and diversity. However, it may also have a higher FPR due to its lower quality. For instance, when comparing two models from the Gemma 2 family on the math dataset, the weaker model showed 11% higher coverage and 86% higher diversity, but also a 7% higher FPR. We then fine-tune models using data from both the stronger and weaker models across three different training paradigms: knowledge distillation, self-improvement, and a new method we call weak to strong improvement. Using pairs of models from the Gemma 2 and Gemini 1.5 families, we demonstrate that training on data generated by the weaker model consistently yields better results than training on data from the stronger model, with improvements of up to 31.6%. Our results suggest that it is more efficient to sample from a weaker model rather than the traditional approach of using a stronger model. As the performance gap between smaller and larger LLMs narrows, especially at larger scales, our findings provide a strong basis for developing the next generation of reasoning LLMs. In our preliminary work, we define our training dataset as a collection of reasoning questions and their corresponding answers. We propose a method to enhance model performance by sampling multiple solutions for each question, filtering out incorrect ones, and fine-tuning the model on the remaining data. We measure coverage, diversity, and FPR to evaluate the effectiveness of our approach, which varies depending on the choice of models used for sampling and fine-tuning. Section Summary. In this section, we explore the effectiveness of sampling synthetic data from a weaker, cheaper language model, WC, compared to a stronger, more expensive model, SE, for training purposes. Our findings indicate that while WC models can generate more diverse and comprehensive data under a fixed budget, they may also have a higher false positive rate. Nevertheless, training on WC-generated data consistently outperforms training on SE-generated data across various paradigms. Section: Compute-matched sampling and training. In this section, we discuss how to create a dataset with synthetic solutions derived from an existing dataset. We can use different models to generate these solutions. With a fixed amount of computational resources, we can either produce more samples from a less powerful but cheaper model or fewer samples from a more powerful but costlier model. For our analysis, we focus on decoder-only transformer models. We note that the computational cost for each token processed by a model with a certain number of parameters is proportional to twice that number. Therefore, if we generate a specific number of tokens, the total cost is calculated based on the number of tokens and the model's parameters. We define the number of samples generated per question for the cheaper and more expensive models as S_WC and S_SE, respectively. The total cost for generating samples from each model can be expressed in terms of the number of questions, the number of samples, the average tokens per solution, and the model parameters. At a fixed budget, we can generate more samples from the cheaper model compared to the expensive one, and this ratio is directly related to the number of parameters in each model. By generating more samples from the cheaper model, we may improve our chances of solving a wider range of problems and obtaining diverse solutions. We then explore 3 different fine-tuning approaches, which include knowledge distillation, self-improvement, and a new method we introduce called weak-to-strong improvement. Weak-to-strong improvement involves enhancing a strong model's reasoning abilities using samples from a weaker model. The 3 setups we consider are: 1. Student LM fine-tuning. Here, we typically use data from the expensive model for training. We investigate whether the cheaper model can serve as a substitute for this purpose. 2. WCLM fine-tuning. Previous studies indicated that fine-tuning a cheaper model with its own generated data is less effective than using data from the expensive model. We revisit this under a fixed budget to compare self-improvement with distillation. 3. SELM fine-tuning. It is often thought that improving a strong model requires data from itself or an even stronger model. We test whether data from the cheaper model can still enhance the stronger model. We summarize these setups and their corresponding fine-tuning methods in a table. For our experiments, we use the Math and GSM-8K datasets, which are popular for mathematical problem solving. Math includes competition-level problems of varying difficulty, while GSM-8K contains grade school math problems. Each dataset has 7,500 training problems, and we evaluate our models on a selection of test problems from both datasets. We generate synthetic data using the GEMMA 2 models, with different sizes representing the cheaper and more expensive models. We create solutions for the problems using specific prompting techniques. We set 2 sampling budgets, a low budget with fewer candidate solutions and a high budget with more solutions. We detail our fine-tuning setups in a table, where we fine-tune various models on data from both the cheaper and more expensive models. We also compare the synthetic data's quality by measuring false positive rates, coverage, and diversity at a fixed cost. We use both human evaluations and automated methods to assess the correctness of the generated solutions. Finally, we evaluate the performance of our fine-tuned models using pass-at-1 accuracy, generating a single solution for each problem and comparing it to the correct answer. We also report additional metrics for some experiments, where we generate multiple solutions and select the most frequent answer. Section Summary. In this section, we explore how to generate synthetic datasets using weaker WC and stronger SE models within a fixed sampling budget, highlighting that we can produce more samples from the WC model, which may enhance problem coverage and diversity. We also outline 3 fine-tuning paradigms: Student LM, WCLM, and SELM, aimed at evaluating the effectiveness of data generated from both models, while utilizing established reasoning datasets for our experiments. Section: Experiments and Results. In this section, we compare data from the WC and SE models across several aspects. First, we look at various quality metrics. Next, we present the results of supervised fine-tuning for different setups. Finally, we conduct ablation studies to understand how dataset size, sampling strategy, and quality dimensions affect model performance. For our synthetic data analysis, we focus on the advantages and disadvantages of generating solutions from the WC and SE models within a fixed sampling budget. We examine coverage, diversity, and false positive rates, FPR, for the math dataset at both low and high sampling budgets. Our findings show that the data from GEMMA 2 to 9b, WC, surpasses GEMMA 2 to 27b, SE, in coverage by 11% and 6% for the math dataset at low and high budgets, respectively, and by 8% and 1% for GSM-8K. This indicates that the WC model's larger sample size helps solve more unique problems. We also note that the WC model's coverage improves across different difficulty levels in the math dataset at high sampling budgets, suggesting it can tackle more unique questions compared to the SE model. We provide a qualitative example where repeated sampling from GEMMA 2 to 9b solves a problem that GEMMA 2 to 27b cannot at a fixed high budget. Regarding diversity, the data from GEMMA 2 to 9b shows significantly higher diversity than GEMMA 2 to 27b, with increases of 86% and 125% at low and high budgets for math, and 134% and 158% for GSM-8K. This suggests that the WC model generates many unique reasoning paths leading to correct solutions. We also observe that absolute diversity scores are lower for math than for GSM-8K at high budgets, indicating fewer correct solutions for the more challenging dataset. For FPR, since we filter synthetic data based on final answer correctness, we still retain solutions with incorrect intermediate reasoning steps. Our evaluations indicate that the FPR for WC-generated solutions is 7% and 2% higher than for SE-generated solutions on math and GSM-8K, respectively. The trends from automatic evaluations align with human evaluations. We note that the absolute FPRs are lower for GSM-8K compared to math due to problem difficulty. Additionally, automatic verification of reasoning steps can have errors, which remains an ongoing issue. Given the mixed results of high coverage and diversity alongside high FPR, it is unclear whether sampling from the WC or SE model is more compute optimal for training strong reasoners, which we will explore next. In our compute optimality results for training, we compare the utility of synthetic data from GEMMA 2 to 9b, WC, and GEMMA 2 to 27b, SE, across various fine-tuning paradigms. We also include results from training with human written chain of thoughts as a baseline. For student LM fine-tuning, we find that the GEMMA 7b model fine-tuned with synthetic data from WC consistently outperforms the one fine-tuned on SE data, showing relative gains of 6% and 5.8% at low and high budgets for math, and 4.2% and 1.3% for GSM-8K. Contrary to the belief that stronger models are better for knowledge distillation, our results suggest that fine-tuning on WC data is more compute optimal than on SE data. In WC-LM fine-tuning, we compare the performance of GEMMA 2 to 9b fine-tuned with WC data against SE data. We observe that self-generated data improves upon knowledge distillation from a stronger model, achieving relative gains of 3.8% and 2% at low and high budgets for math, and 1.5% at low budget for GSM-8K. However, we find that the WC model fine-tuned with WC data matches the SE data for GSM-8K at high budgets, likely due to the lower difficulty of the GSM-8K dataset. For SE-LM fine-tuning, we present results for fine-tuning GEMMA 2 to 27b with data generated from GEMMA 2 to 9b and self-generated data. Surprisingly, we find that the model fine-tuned with WC data outperforms SE data, achieving relative gains of 5.8% and 4.3% at low and high budgets for math, and 1.2% and 1.5% for GSM-8K. This is unexpected since GEMMA 2 to 27b data is assumed to be more in distribution. Our findings indicate that training a model in a WC setup using WC data may be more compute optimal than self-improvement on its own data, establishing a new paradigm for enhancing models efficiently by generating synthetic data from smaller models. Lastly, we examine the generalization capabilities of models trained with WC and SE data. We evaluate models fine-tuned with synthetic solutions for the math dataset at high sampling budgets on the functional math dataset. Our results show that GEMMA 7b fine-tuned with WC data consistently outperforms SE data, with relative gains ranging from 5.8% to 6.5%. Additionally, GEMMA 2 to 9b fine-tuned with self-generated data outperforms knowledge distillation with GEMMA 2 to 27b data, achieving relative gains from 2.5% to 4.5%. Furthermore, fine-tuning GEMMA 2 to 27b with WC data closely matches SE data, except for one case where there is a 2% gain. Our results emphasize that fine-tuning LMs with WC data enhances generalization capabilities over SE data at a fixed sampling budget. Overall, our findings challenge conventional beliefs and suggest that training with the WC model may be more compute optimal across various tasks and setups. Section Summary. In this section, we compare the performance of synthetic data generated from the WC and SE models across various metrics, revealing that the WC model consistently outperforms the SE model in coverage and diversity, while also demonstrating that fine-tuning with WC data is more compute optimal for training models on reasoning tasks. Our findings suggest that using synthetic data from smaller models can enhance generalization capabilities and challenge conventional beliefs about model strength in knowledge distillation. Section: Ablation Studies. In this section, we investigate the effects of dataset size on the advantages of synthetic data generated by the weakly constrained WC model. We conduct experiments using the math dataset with a limited training set of 500 randomly selected samples. Our findings, illustrated in the figure, show that models trained with WC data outperform those using the strong examples, SE data, with improvements of approximately 12.93%, 11.4%, and 5.1% across 3 different paradigms. This emphasizes the value of generating more data from the WC model, especially when working with smaller datasets. Next, we explore the differences between default sampling and compute-optimal sampling from inexpensive language models. We suspect that the preference for SE data over WC data stems from previous tests where an equal number of samples were generated from both models, rather than matching the computational resources used. To test this, we generated one solution per problem from the WC model for the math and GSM-8K datasets and trained models under 3 fine-tuning setups, ensuring the final answers were correct. We then compared these models to those trained with 3 solutions per problem from the WC model, matched in computational effort to the SE model. Our results, shown in the figure, indicate that models trained with the number-matched WC data perform worse than those trained with compute-matched WC data, and are inferior to those trained with SE data. This suggests that future comparisons of synthetic data from weak and strong models should consider matching computational resources. Finally, we examine how coverage and diversity impact the performance of models trained with WC-generated synthetic data. For the math dataset, we use the original high-sampling WC dataset, which has high coverage and high diversity, as a baseline. We then create a version with high coverage but low diversity by selecting only one correct solution per question, reducing diversity from 11 to 1 while keeping coverage intact. Additionally, we generate a low coverage and low diversity dataset by producing just one solution per problem from the WC model, which results in a coverage of 27%, lower than the 43% of the original dataset. We train models on these 3 datasets and present the results in the figure. Our findings reveal that high coverage and high diversity data consistently outperforms high coverage and low diversity, which in turn is better than low coverage and low diversity. This underscores the importance of both coverage and diversity in developing effective reasoning models from smaller language models.